What's up, guys? Chris from Full Battle Jacket here, and I just wanted to do a quick video, kind of I guess, a post-mortem on the news surrounding Firewalk Studios and the loss of Concord. And certainly there was evidence that they were making some updates in the background on Steam, potentially trying to pivot the game into some kind of a free-to-play model. And, my working theory is that they, the devs met with Sony and turned in their homework, so to speak, and Sony took a look at it and, frankly, probably made the right decision in terms of canning the studio. I'm not going to sit here and celebrate anyone losing their job, but I do feel that this was quite necessary in terms of, really just a reckoning to, let Sony know loud and clear, let the industry at large know loud and clear that this is not what we want as gamers, as consumers of games media content. So what can we learn from this? What can Sony learn from this? That's the question. I think the very first thing that we can point to is the voice of the customer. In practically any industry that sells a product or a service, there's often a voice of the customer analysis to make sure that the business is aligned with the wants and needs of the people who they expect to purchase their product. There's a cat currently behind me scaling my chair. Say hi, Pepper. That's Pepper. When Sony revealed Concord to the world during their State of Play presentation, it was a big part of that particular presentation several months back. And the game was promptly ratioed. Comments online on YouTube, out on Twitter or X or whatever it wants to be called these days. Sony fans were loud and clear that this was not a game anyone really wanted. It was a no frills, generic 5v5 hero shooter in the vein of Overwatch. However, unlike Overwatch, the character designs were uninspired and downright ugly even. All of the characters looked very plain, uninteresting, generic. You had several that looked like they were put in there to pander to, body positivity and different political ideologies. And at the end of the day, it was roundly rejected by the player base. On top of all that, the gameplay, while competent, wasn't doing anything different enough to differentiate it from other games in the industry. And so when players provided their feedback, it was heard loud and clear by developers at Firewalk Studios who rejected it as nothing more than quote-unquote white noise. You had developers, character designers, and even community managers attacking PlayStation fans online, telling them if they don't like the game, just don't buy it. The irony is players heard that loud and clear and didn't buy the game. Concord purportedly sold a total of, 2,500 copies, which was the reason it was pulled offline in less than 2 weeks' time, and everyone was refunded their money. Concord was a misfire of epic proportions. Sony supposedly sunk $400 million into the development of Concord. And for all we know, that $400 million doesn't include marketing costs that were set aside to market the game. In December, Amazon is airing an original series called Secret Level, and there's an entire episode of the show dedicated to Concord. So I think at the end of the day, this is exactly what happens when you don't listen to the voice of your customer.
Not listening. Not listening.
Another misfire was Sony internally was calling Concord the future of PlayStation. They thought they had something as culturally significant as Star Wars. Think about that for a second. When I think of Star Wars, at least old Star Wars, because current day Star Wars has more or less kind of fallen off. It's not nearly as popular as it used to be ever since Disney got their grubby little mitts on it. But when I think of Star Wars, I don't just think about the movies. I think about the toys and the merchandising, action figures. I have several Star Wars figures back there on my shelf. Everything that you can think of, from toys to board games to movies and animated series. Like, that's kind of what Sony thought they had in Concord. They thought they had kind of like a cross-media darling in Concord, which makes no sense to me. Like, when you look at some of these character designs, can you imagine wearing them on like a t-shirt or something like that? Can you imagine buying a statuette of those characters and putting them on a shelf like I have back here? I mean, I couldn't. This was a game that nobody asked for.
A picky baby.
A game that is entirely antithetical to the brand that I grew up with.
A picky baby.
These characters and these worlds from this game didn't exactly exude the PlayStation DNA.
A picky baby.
And while some said the moment-to-moment gameplay was actually pretty decent, I didn't play it. I didn't even play the free demo. Lots of people didn't play the free demo when it was released. I did watch some other streamers play it just because it was like a new first-party Sony offering. I had at least some interest in witnessing what the gameplay looked like. Many of the fellow content creators and streamers that I follow, they didn't really seem to connect with any of the characters. The hero shooter genre has been done to death. This game was a copy of a copy of an imitation. This entire Sony PlayStation 5 generation has been just so disappointing, and it's really ironic because coming out of the PlayStation 4, Sony had never been stronger. And, you know, you look over on the Xbox side, and this was really their time to shine amidst all of Sony's fumbles and mistakes and failures. They really could have taken this generation by the throat and shook it around. But, you know, on the Xbox side, you know, it's a very similar situation. Nobody has games. Everybody is way too focused on live services. Let's take Sony's live service strategy, for example. When Jim Ryan took over, he announced that there would be 12 live service games that were in development. A few years later, half of those were canceled. When I think about the number of PlayStation studios, of the half that were canceled, which studios were impacted? How long were they working on these games? What was the opportunity cost? You know, what could they have been working on instead of that game that ended up being canceled? And then the real irony is, of the games that were canceled, Naughty Dog's Last of Us Factions was one of the casualties. I think Naughty Dog made the right decision to stop development of Factions internally, because if they had proceeded with their live service plans, as we know, they wouldn't have been able to deliver the same great game experiences that we're used to from them in terms of, like, you know, narrative-heavy games. They wouldn't have been able to deliver The Last of Us 3. But given how long Factions was in development, there had to be something there, some semblance of a playable game. I think it was Bungie who consulted on the game and told them that it wasn't sticky enough in terms of monetization. And to that I say, fuck monetization. Who gives a shit? Why cancel the game? Instead of Naughty Dog handling the development, why didn't Sony or Naughty Dog farm it out to a second-party development partner and have them finish and polish the game? They could have added some kind of monetization, even if it wasn't as robust a plan as Sony would have liked in terms of a live service strategy. Why are they spending all this money on unproven studios instead of cultivating a relationship the way they did with studios like Insomniac or Sucker Punch or any other legacy studios that we know and love today? Those studios didn't start off as Sony-owned first-party studios. They were second-party partners. And over time, they built a long-lasting and trusted legacy with players. Let's talk about Destruction All-Stars and the logic behind that game. The Fortnitification of vehicular combat. Sony owns Twisted freaking Metal. Who wouldn't kill for a modern Twisted Metal game? It's like Sony has all of these legendary franchises and they refuse to capitalize on their IP. And really, at the end of the day, when it comes to live service games, I don't have much of an interest in them. I am not a multiplayer kind of person. I like what I like. I like my single-player RPGs. I like my JRPGs. I like my third-person, over-the-shoulder action-adventure games. Their strategy is like diametrically opposed to everything I love about PlayStation. I have a lot of disdain for executives like Jim Ryan and Herman Hulst for this ill-conceived live service strategy. Why is Sony buying teams like Haven Studios? I'm going to say it right here, right now. I predict that Haven Studios is going to be the next Firewalk. Fairgames will be a colossal failure. This game looks like Concord on planet Earth and repackaged as a heist game. I miss the old, weird, quirky Sony PlayStation. If PlayStation continues to have grand ambitions for live services, I think they're better off investing in studios from emerging markets like Korea and China. And I think all in all, games need to stop being so pandering. They need to stop being so political. Concord's character designs weren't bad because they were diverse and inclusive. They were bad because they were uninteresting, unappealing, and ugly. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. Drop a comment down below. Let me know if you have any post-mortem thoughts for Firewalk Studios, looking back on Concord as a game, the opportunity costs lost. I'd love to hear from you. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.